Welcome back to Advertising is Dead with Stars. Um, when I first got to know about your company and what you're kind of building out, there are a few things that came to mind, but I thought a good way to start this conversation off would be what brought you towards focusing on audio advertising and kind of figuring how that could be innovated beyond a one-way approach. I think that's a good place to start. It's wide enough, and I'd love to go deep post that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today and to speak with you. Yeah. So it all started back in 2015. Back then, me and my team were working on business development at a music streaming app.
Mm-hmm.
And back then we realized that it's close to impossible to make money on music streaming, because people don't want to pay for subscriptions in general. Even in rich markets, it's still the percentage of people who are willing to pay for music is fairly low. And on the other hand, it was so hard to compensate that loss with audio advertising. And it became clear to us that it's not just our problem, it's a global problem, especially given that 77% of internet users are listening to audio content, and yet audio advertising represents, I don't know, like less than, I think, 3% of digital ad spend. So clearly there's a disbalance, a big disbalance. And we thought that if we can solve that problem, that challenge for the industry, then that's a great opportunity to create a lot of value for everybody. And so we started working on, we started Instreamatic as a way to solve what we've learned later was the engagement challenge that the audio advertising had. Meaning you cannot engage with audio ads because you listen to them in the background. There are no clicks, no performance, no measurement. It's really hard to compete with display and video. And that's how we got started with this product and with this company.
That's actually an interesting point, and I don't know why that's never been that much of a focus. I feel that with music, what ended up happening was advertising just kind of came in. People took what was there in radio, plugged it in between songs, and that's what it became. And also because we don't look at our apps or don't look at the platforms when we are listening, right? We just have something plugged in and maybe a phone or your laptop are just lying around. So how do you evolve it from what is, in a sense, a one-way stream? If you kind of go back to when you started off and say, okay, this is what you set out to solve. For the first period of it, what were the initial learnings and how did you come upon the product you have right now?
Yeah, so we were thinking a lot how we can solve the engagement challenge. And one day it just struck us, voice is the answer. Because that's natural way to engage with everything, actually. And back then we already had Siri, but it was maybe 6 months before Alexa happened. I mean, Alexa boom and hype. I remember it clearly. It was CES 2017 when everybody just started talking about Alexa. And we were lucky with the timing, because when we introduced our first pilot product, this is exactly when Alexa hype started, and it helped us a lot. And it also helped us in on a macro level, because it kind of it made the voice adoption faster. So that was the first part, to realize what needs to be done. But then the second step was, I think it was a harder task for us, like how it should work, because it wasn't obvious back then. And still, this is the reality of, even today, we have 30-second ad spots. So all audio ads are supposed to fit 30-second ad blocks, like 90% of them. You have 15 as well, but majority is 30-second. And when you can speak with the consumer, when you can have a dialogue, you cannot fit it in 30 seconds, because conversations can go in many directions. Started with, I want to learn more, and all the way to leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you right now. It cannot be the same 30-second ad length. And I think that was maybe the biggest breakthrough that we had when we just said to ourselves, what if we had no advertising today? So why don't we forget about radio ads? How would we want ads to be and to be like today, right? And it was clear we would want it to be AI driven, conversational, interactive, and fun. And it should be short, because today everybody's like multitasking, always, in a hurry.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, if that's the case, why don't we make ads better? Because let's be real, people hate ads. They love brands, but
Yes,
they
they
hate
do.
ads. So if we can make ads entertaining, shorter, and more relevant, that's just a better world to live in, right? And so we started with this construct, which serves you what we call an invitation to a dialogue. It's like on average 10-second audio tease that starts with something like, hey, this is your favorite coffee shop. How would you like to skip the line in the morning and get a warm or a hot cup of coffee waiting for you? And then you can respond, oh, yeah, I'd love that. All right, so this is what you need to do. Get our rep, for example. Or you can say, no, I don't like coffee. Go away. All right, sorry about that. We'll try harder next time. And we enable that interactivity on the user side. But on the back end, we measure all the insights, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah. So, and that's actually an interesting part, because in most cases, we are not, and I feel Alexa has changed that. And over time, weirdly enough, although Siri started off, I feel that Alexa kind of moved it up a notch far faster than anything else. But we're over time coming to a point where I see present generations especially are a lot more open to just having a conversation with a device. You go to anyone, I'm guessing older than a certain age, even in their late 30s would be, it takes a little bit to kind of come to that point. So keeping that in mind, how do you look at building that user journey, right? How do you build the user journey for, okay, this is what will work for, as you guys call it, a dialogue-based ad. How will that work versus how we've always done things? How do you kind of remap that journey?
Yeah. One comment about demographics. There is data showing which demographics are ahead of the learning curve and which are lagging behind. And the lagging behind people are people our age, 30 to 50 years old.
Yeah.
So you get obviously younger people adapting voice fast. They don't like to type. But then you also have older people. For them, it's so hard to figure out visual interfaces that they prefer to talk. So it's really
so true, actually.
It's really interesting market to be in today, because you're actually talking to really young and fairly old people. Because people our age, they're like, I know how to type. I spent 30 years of my life learning it. So I'm
I don't want to give that up so
change.
quickly. It's like, and that's so true, actually. I see that older people use all the devices, but the only thing I see, and I feel that's where it is because you have multiple devices and multiple ways to kind of do this. I guess everybody's got their own way of doing it. So it gets, I'm sure it's far tougher to build a user journey in audio than it is in what is text or video, because you don't know how someone's going to respond. I mean, the options are infinite.
Yeah. So going back to your question, what we've learned is the only thing that can work and the only thing that works is a natural conversation. So when we think about IVR experience, when you call a bank or some company and they put you on hold, say this for that, say that for this, and then eventually everybody just screaming representative. Because it's kind of it's not great user experience. So we thought we're not doing that because it's just we have it a lot already. And it took us a lot of time to actually create this AI driven platform that can understand people's intents regardless of what they say. So if there is sense in what you're saying, will get it.
Mm.
So that's number one. It should really be a resonant one-on-one conversation, which can be like, hey, I'm this brand. Do you want to, discuss this? Do you want to learn more? Are you interested? Just say, how are you feeling today? And then you as a listener, you don't really have to think about what exactly you should say. You're just like, well, sure, tell me, or F off, or whatever. You kind of get this. We put you in a very comfortable environment because you talk to other people every day and you do it many, many times. So there is no point of friction. And that proved to be the right approach because it allows us to get really, really high engagement rates. I'll give you a couple of numbers. So I remember when we were launching our first pilot, we thought like, if we can only reach 3% voice engagement rate, that would be great because, the average CDRs are lower than 1%. And then we saw 14, so 1.4. And it blew us away. But what's really interesting is that the numbers are still consistent over the time and across multiple territories where we're live. And it wasn't obvious why this is the case, because you can expect to have some novelty effect and then numbers would go back to like 1%, right? But then it became clear that nothing is easier than just to say what you think out loud. You don't need to look for green button for X and whatever. You just say whatever you want.
Yeah. And then at the back end of it, how do you kind of track what's working, what's not working? How do you look at the data and kind of break it up for someone to look at it saying, this is what I've learned from the data, or this is how I map it going ahead?
So what we're doing effectively is we're measuring intentions. So we measure if there is intent and what kind of intent is it. It could be a purchase insight, like, hey, I'm interested in your brand, or I'm interested in this product, tell me more. Or it could be an intention to not to buy, or at least not now, with responses like, no, not interested, or probably not in the foreseeable future, with responses like, leave me alone, don't talk to me ever again, F off. And we call it 50 shades of no, because we think the no is the most valuable component in the voice era, because now you can learn and measure, learn why 99% of people don't click on ads, because now you can hear them explaining why. And we think this is the most powerful component. This is the biggest breakthrough in marketing in I think since the internet, because internet made ads interactive, and now voice era makes them kind of two-way conversation, and now we have the no interest. And marketers can access all these insights and leverage them to increase efficiency of marketing campaigns. A good example would be, if you know that somebody is interested, then you can take this person on one journey. And if you have somebody who's not interested, and no today doesn't mean no forever, right? So you can take them on a different journey. Yeah. Which is a way to create healthy and good relationship with that particular person.
You make a good point. You don't have to go looking for that one X somewhere, which is hidden in a tiny part of a visual ad, which you're trying to get rid of so you can move on to your content. You're just saying, I don't want to see this, or I don't want to listen to this anymore, and you kind of move ahead. I'd love to dig into an example of how you've done this. I know that you did something with Pizza Hut, and I'd love to look at that as an example of how that would work for a brand, and how it would even work for the consumer and how they interacted with it.
Yeah, Pizza Hut was a great case study that we did with Zaxxas and with Ghana last year. So the ad, it was targeting people. It was offering buy one get one campaign, and what we did is that we offered the offer, if you will. So those who were interested, they were taken to the landing page. Well, first they heard more details about how great it is, and then they were taken to the landing page. Those who were not interested, so first we assumed that maybe the time was wrong. So maybe somebody just ate, and so it just wasn't the right moment. So we came back with what we call a continuous dialogue technology, So we came back with a new creative, which was like, hey, last time we spoke, probably you went hungry, but if you're now, here's our offer. And we managed to generate interest among the audience that originally declined the offer. So it became really powerful.
So almost like a salesperson who learns after one sales pitch doesn't go through, your ad's almost functioning in that scenario, rather than the same ad coming back to them again and again.
Yeah, but we do it in a general way because it always fairly short interaction. It's not like you say no, they're like, oh, no, don't go away. I have this, I have that. No, 10% discount, don't go away.
Yeah.
No, it's like, not now. Fine, let's go back to music. But next time you get an ad, and this is the best part, it won't be the same repetitive ad, right, that you already heard many times. So it'll be something else. It picks up where you left it off.
Also, from a creative standpoint, that would require you to create multiple iterations and versions of I think you almost like mapping out all the scenarios of daytime, nighttime, around lunch, or let's say any meal in that sense. Just as an example for some, from an execution standpoint, how did that work out? How do you kind of have, how do you build that out as a brand?
The first step is to understand your target action. So what do you want to achieve eventually? That's where you start. Like you start with the end, right, of the journey. And then you, just like you said, map it out to the start. So, so what do you want to say to those who are interested? And let's say then this journey can also go in many directions. So the first scenario is like, I'm interested, but I didn't buy it. So what are you going to say to this person? Obviously there is interest, but you need just to close to land the deal, right? Then you have those who not interested, but it could be just not bad moment, right? Could be the bad moment. What are you going to say to them? Or those who, again, using profanity, then this is a great opportunity to use a highly emotional moment to reverse it and respond with a joke and kind of create a surprise. It's like it's such a fantastic effect to take on people, because if somebody's like, leave me alone, I hate you, I don't like ads, and then all of a sudden it responds with a joke and can be like, does your mother know you talk like this? It could be such a memorable experience that I'm sure this person will go and tell 10 friends, like, oh, I just spoke with, I don't know, with this brand, and guess what? So yeah, we provide best practices, how to do that. We also help with creatives and with copywriting, because we know what works and what doesn't. And also, the more you do it, the easier it gets in terms of creating great copywriting, great copy. Sorry. Yeah. So right now we're helping marketers and brands, but the more experience they get building dialogues, the easier it will be for them. And what's really great about conversational ads is that it doesn't have to be high production value creative. So you don't have to have like jingles, special effects, dents and bears. It really has to be a resonant one-on-one conversation. And we did a lot of case studies around it, and we saw that adding special effects and complexity just doesn't help. It actually distracts.
So the simpler it is, in a sense, the better it is, because I guess the audience has more clarity rather than getting overwhelmed by all the stuff that's happening in the background.
Right. It's just like us speaking right now. Imagine if instead of me responding to you, I would be, jumping, dancing, and then adding music and then explosions. It will be so hard to understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. So when we're looking at this, and it brings me to an interesting point, right? Well, audio advertising has seen this jump with voice becoming a part of the conversation. How do you kind of bring that into any of the platforms? So let's say if I am If I'm a Ghana, if I'm, let's say, a Spotify, I'm any of these platforms, how does this kind of enhance how I put out audio advertising? Because I think a lot of them also are trying to figure out different ways to kind of keep consumers as part of their platform. So how does this work in a positive sense beyond the monetization part for those platforms?
If you think about it, interactive and skippable ads are better user experience than repetitive 30-second audio ads. Mm-hmm. So, and we did a lot of research around it. Every time so first of all, only those who opt in can get a voice ad. And when we offer users this experience, we tell them like, hey, if you want to make audio ads interactive, some of them will be skippable. You allow us to access microphone. And on average, we see 50 to 80% adoption in the first 90 days. It just tells us that, people don't like their ad experiences, so they're ready to do whatever just to improve it. And this looks like a big improvement because it makes it more fun, less repetitive, and potentially shorter. And so we never experienced any kind of a pushback when we launched voice ads on all the publishers that we're working with today.
In an interesting way, what I'm also kind of feeling as you're speaking is that this also fundamentally provides an opportunity for visual advertising as well, because visual advertising, as much as we like to say it has become more interactive, it's still in many ways still the one-way street. It's still one way. How do you see this playing into that aspect as well? Because if you can make the audio aspects of visual ads a lot more interactive and a lot more dialogue based, do you see that as an evolution of this, where this actually goes just beyond just being audio to across the board?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. So we think of voice advertising as mobile advertising 12 years ago. So it's early days, but it's going to affect all ad-supported media. So obviously starting with audio, which is a natural space for voice right now, but eventually we'll see voice interfaces and voice marketing expanded into video, into gaming, into navigation, everywhere, because voice is the easiest input for us. It's a lot easier for us to say what we want to get instead of just typing or clicking.
I have a bunch more pieces to ask you, but I know we need to go in for a break, so just going to take a quick break and come right back to Advertising is Dead. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We still with Stas. The next aspect I actually want to talk to you about is that as this form of advertising kind of scales up, and a large part of the audience of this podcast are young, not just from a consumer end of things, but also people who are getting into the job market, who are already in the early stages of their careers and are trying to figure out what the future kind of holds, so what they could do. How do you see this aspect kind of scaling up the kind of career opportunities people could have, what they could actually end up doing, what kind of roles they might be able to work in, and even where they might want to upskill themselves?
I think this is a great opportunity, especially for those who are just starting their careers, because this is a nascent space. There is so much to do in voice marketing, and not just in voice advertising, which we're discussing today, but also you have skills. You're gonna see voice assistants owned by each brand. So let's say when you talk to, for example, Mercedes-Benz, you talk to their assistant across all the media channels. You're not talking to Alexa or to Siri, you're actually talking to them, or Coca-Cola. And it's be so important to make it right, because brands' reputation is at stake. Because if you as a user say something and then, for example, Coca-Cola doesn't get you, and you said something simple, it's not like you really tried hard, but you're just like, I don't know, yes, I'm not interested, and it doesn't get you. That's super bad. And And on the country, if user says, no, I'm interested, and you got it right, then it creates so much value for brands. So it's going to be so important to make it right, to get it done right, to use the right technology, and also to help the AI to, how should I say, to speak in the way that this particular brand should speak. It shouldn't be generic. Each brand should have a unique voice, a unique way of communicating. Some brands like to be bold, others should be rather neutral, and on, right? So there's a lot of opportunities. And I'm personally really excited about what we're doing, what we're seeing in the industry.
There's an interesting aspect to this as well. That is the fact that the more we, and I feel that this is even predating voice, is that the more of our personal preferences and data that we are sharing, it makes our experience as consumers a lot more, I'd say a lot richer and a lot more personalized. And therein comes the question many times about, okay, this is still my data. I want that level of privacy. So especially as we move into spaces like this, how do you see that balancing out? How do you see that, okay, I love a bunch of these brands. I want them to be able to speak to me and I can speak back to them. But I also want to make sure the access I give them is something I can kind of control, which I know is one of the trickiest conversations in this entire space, right? We go, I feel like we fluctuate between, okay, I want everything personalized, but I also want my privacy. It's almost like saying I want to have my cake and eat it too. But how do you find that balance?
People are afraid of what they don't understand or what they don't know. And the problem with ad tech is that people don't know or don't understand why we see those shoes on a different website, the shoes that they saw somewhere else. So they don't know how it works. And it creates this feeling of somebody spying on me. It's like literally somebody sitting behind my back and watching what I'm doing in order to show me relevant ad.
Yeah.
And I think voice ads, I know it sounds like I'm biased, but if you think about it, voice ads can really change that, because the way for you as a user to control what brand knows about you is by saying only what you wanted to know. So when you have a conversation, let's say with Coca-Cola, it's up to you to decide what you want to say, what do you want to tell Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And then you have your own personal experience and relationship with Coca-Cola based on what you said. And that makes it transparent. That makes it easy to understand, because the next time when Coke comes back to you and it picks up the conversation where you left it off, you don't feel surprised because, oh yeah, we discussed it like a week ago. So obviously, you remember. It would be weird if you didn't remember.
Yeah.
Unlike with all the retargeting mechanisms that people and it's, and it's so funny that everybody's after ad tech, given that ad tech doesn't have personal identifiable information. So they don't know people's names, addresses, credit card information, unlike e-commerce, for example, right? But e-commerce is clear, it's transparent. Like, I gave my credit card to the shop, so my expectation that this shop has my personal information. But with ad tech, the problem is that everything is happening in the back end. And voice marketing and voice ads is a way to I think, to make it right for the very first time.
I don't think you're just being biased. I actually feel that what you said makes sense, because oftentimes you don't know what you're sharing unless you actually say it. I think what we click isn't necessarily something we retain, right? We don't know where we clicked on and what we agreed upon, or like what we swipe through. But if you've said something in somewhere at the back of your head, you said it. Now I'm going to have a very complicated thought, and tell me if that's where things are kind of going. As you're talking, it came to me is that, let's say I'm talking to, you mentioned Coca-Cola or something. Let's say I'm talking to Coca-Cola, but I'm saying a lot of the stuff I've said to them, I'd love for any other brand in the same space to know that these are my preferences. So without me even having to say it, you already know it. I know I'm complicating it, but is that a possibility in the future?
Yes, and I think the way brands should think about it is they can use this dialogue opportunities to get people's opinions. So it doesn't have to be like, hey, buy our product. It could be like, hey, we're thinking about new flavor for our summer Coke, whatever. What would you like to buy? Grape or watermelon, for example. And they're like, watermelon is fine. And then all of a sudden, Coke got your opinion. You had a conversation with the brand, but it wasn't a sales pitch, right? So everybody wins. You just shared your tastes. Coke learned something about you and about the market, which is a win-win.
Yeah, there's something interesting which I found or when I was running through some details, some research on you, is that you speak about the trifecta of how you make sure that you have happy consumers and happy platforms and happy brands. I'd love for you to get into that, because in some cases, that's what ad tech is really working towards, right? You have three, in every case, you actually have three sets of people you have to kind of make sure that they're all happy. How do you kind of focus on that trifecta?
The cornerstone of what we do is good user experience, because if people don't like it, that means they won't engage. That means we don't have the business, and it just doesn't work. And so the first step for us to get the user experience right, and I believe we did that because the engagement rates tell us that it's working. People are talking, even when they say no, and most people say no to an ad, it's still great because they're not interested in. So we make their ad experience shorter. So users win because they get shorter, interactive, and a lot more fun ad experience. Advertisers win because they can, well, first in the audio space, they can measure engagement. That's just not available right now. And so, but then they can also measure the no interest part, which we think is just the most valuable component, because it can put voice advertising at the forefront of your bigger communication strategy, because now you can learn who are those people who are interested and not interested, what they have in common, where they live, and that can affect your bigger marketing campaign on Facebook, on TV, and radio, because you can get some insights before you spend millions of dollars on a bigger campaign. So that's how advertisers win. And publishers win because first, they provide better user experience. They can now, they can serve fewer repetitive ads. And two, we introduced a new business model, new for the audio industry, which is cost per intent. And that means when we measure an intent, that's when advertiser pays. And that allows publishers and platforms to make higher eCPMs, so higher ad yields. So users get better and shorter ad experience. Publishers are making more money and serving less annoying and fewer repetitive ads. And advertisers, they get insights that they cannot get elsewhere.
That's actually an interesting metric, because most times I feel intent gets missed a lot and that's one of my key takeaways, right? Everything that we've spoken about is that I feel the more you can map out intent, you take away in many cases the part about advertising that most people don't like, is the fact that which is the fact that I'm getting ads pushed onto me which I don't necessarily want, and I think that intent makes it a far richer experience. So that's a very interesting metric to look at, especially from a brand's point of view. And what I also want to ask you is, where is this kind of headed? We've spoken about a bunch of the points here, but if you have to kind of look at it and almost say, this is what's kind of leading up to for the future, if you had to pick a few things, especially for brands, what would those be?
I think brands should start thinking about their sonic identity, like how exactly their brand should sound like. So that the next time you hear this voice, you immediately understand, oh, it's X brand talking to me. So they don't have to say like, hey, it's us. It's like, oh yeah, I know it's you because that's your unique voice. So that's number one. Number two is the style. Like each brand, especially all the good ones, they represent some values. And values, they get distributed through visuals, through the copy, and now it's time to also distribute them through voice, through brand's voice. It doesn't have to be even one voice, but it has to be something consistent, right, across the board. And then then they should look at the entire sales funnel and see where different voice products can fit, because you have voice ads, then you're going to have voice surveys, then you can sign up people to your voice apps on many voice assistant platforms. So yeah, it's a new universe. So hard to repurpose what we had in the internet so far.
Yeah, I could not agree more on that front. Towards the later half of every episode, I ask all my guests a set of questions, and they generally aren't about work; they're more about you. And so, apart from focusing on all the voice experiences, what do you spend a lot of your time doing? What's your what keeps you interested? What keeps you go? What takes up your time outside of work?
I really like just observing life. I know it sounds a bit.
Doesn't feel this thing in a. If you'd said this maybe 2 odd years ago, it would have been I'd say far deeper question from my end as a response. But oh wow, that's like a massive bike sound going on in the background. I don't know if that's coming in.
I can barely hear it. Don't worry.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, but I'm gathering that is this a recent phenomenon, or has this always been the case?
I think maybe it's just I'm getting a bit older every day. So I noticed that I kind of stopped cheering for one side, because you always have different groups of people. You're gonna have this tribalism, right? This is my tribe. We're always right. Your tribe is always wrong. So now let's discuss this. Yeah. So I kind of get a lot of joy just by observing it, because I understand that it's not about right or wrong, truth or lie. It's really about interests, and then how people try to fight for their interests, creating different stories. So I like to discuss this with people that I meet. I'm curious of new opinions and new angles on the facts and on the stories that everybody hears, because there's always many sides of one story, and I really enjoy learning all the sides that I'm missing. So that allows me to relax and to kind of have fun time, because today it's just, if you're not really into this fight, then it's such a fun pleasure just observing it.
That's a fabulous answer. I feel that the more time we spend, and I agree with you that the more time we spend observing how everybody else is, just like understanding what everybody else's point of view is, not just about work, but about life and everything else, is so much to learn, as long as you keep yourself open to those points of view, rather than staying in your own bubble. I feel we've lived in many bubbles now over the last few years. Anything that you've read, listened to, or watched in recent times that you'd recommend?
I think that's the question where I would feel good if I give you something that you haven't heard of before. But I guess I'm a boring guy. I prefer for mainstream audience to filter what's good for me, and then I can just watch the top content. So obviously, I watch things like Billions, Black Mirror, if we're talking about TV shows.
Yeah.
I listen to audiobooks because I got I got exhausted of reading and typing throughout the day. So I like to listen to books and podcasts.
You just moved to an audio experience altogether now, beyond work as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's important for people like me, meaning for people who work on products that affects millions of people. It's important to understand how the majority thinks and how what's popular today. It's not just about the content, it's about probably the way of communication and how we all evolving, because it's so easy to get stuck in your own bubble, so you miss the evolution.
And what is generally my last question, which is always a take on the name of the show, is why do you think conversational audio advertising will not die? It's a longer term, but I just thought I'll go deeper on this one and see what you come back.
Because it's part of a bigger trend. It's part of bigger trend, which is called voice era. What we've learned so far, by we, I don't mean just our company, we as everybody involved in the industry. So what we've learned so far is that voice is the easiest way to input information, and displaying screens is the easiest way to output information. And it seems that that's where it's all going. You're going to have a lot of screens that you can speak with. And in that environment, just showing a bunch of banners, I don't think is a great idea. Or text, and video ads, they'll become voice enabled as well. But then voice is not a new medium. It's rather a way to enhance all our current experiences.
Thank you so much for doing this, Stas. It's been a fabulous conversation, and it's an area which I feel that most people haven't understood as much in terms of what the possibilities are. And I think I'm happy we've done this chat. So almost kickstarts a bunch of minds as to what more they could actually do in the space. So thank you so much for coming on Advertising Instead.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.